That has got to be one of the most impressive setup I have seen in a movie in a long time. Just a setup. Hello everyone, this is my name is Daidarius and welcome to the review of Us! That was weird. So Us follow this family who's going on a vacation in this lake town. Is a place somewhere over in America. Oh. And throughout this day, they more and more notice that some weird coincidences is happening around them. And then one night, something happens where they get attacked by a different family. Or is it a different family? I could go into more details about this movie's plot, however, that would be ruining this movie. So, I'm not gonna do any more for this synopsis. All you need to know is that this family is on vacation. Some kind of accident happened to the mother in her childhood years, which is an introduction to this movie, and now we are here. So, what did I like about this movie? Well, first of all, the characters. The characters are actually quite interesting and entertaining. I mean, they have some kind of layers. I mean, the children, not so much, but they're okay. Especially the actors portraying these kids are quite awesome because I didn't feel like their acting was piss poor or anything. I actually felt that their acting was genuine. I actually thought that their acting was natural. So nice, because it's not always, easy to make child actors act well. Then there's the mother. She's clearly damaged for some episode that happened in her childhood, but she's also a loving mother and she has some kind of humor to it, and she also is kind of a badass when the situation needs it to be. Then you have the father. The father is just my type of guy. I mean, he is joking all the time. He's acting kind of like a child, but when push comes to shove, then he acts up. He stands up and he is there for his family, and he puts his foot down when they need to do something or decide something. All in all, this family felt like a normal family. Then there's a setting. We have seen the setting a million times before, a cabin in the woods, but this is a different take on it because this is more like the whole town is the cabin in the woods. There's no place you really feel safe here. And also the humor in general in this movie are genuine and at sometimes even hilarious. I laughed out loud a couple of times while watching this movie. And you might even have mistaken this movie for being a comedy movie. Which then gets me to the horror aspect of this movie, because what this movie does well is building up horror, building up suspense, especially when this family gets attacked by this different family in their own vacation home. The way it just keeps building up horror in that place is just magnificently done, and I was kind of uneasy while watching the scene. And as you might remember from my live review, that is what I want to get out of a horror movie, is uneasiness, just sitting there and just doesn't feel right, just be kind of scared for the situation, not because of a jump scare or anything, but just because the situation in itself, the atmosphere in itself, is putting me in an uncomfortable place. And this movie managed to do that in a couple of scenarios. And then there's the premise of this movie. The premise of this movie is freaking amazing. I won't spoil it for you, but nonetheless, when you get to the end of it and you get the whole lore of this movie, you just sit there and go, how the hell did you come up with that? And you even go back to the beginning titles on this movie, because this movie opens up with a title screen where you need to read some paragraphs, and then the movie in the end connects back to these paragraphs. And I just love when a movie uses paragraph and then it is implemented into the story, and just exposition, but it is kind of cryptic, and then at the end of the movie you go, so that was that meant. That being said, this movie isn't just all sunshine and rainbows, even though it does a lot of things quite well. One of the issues with this movie is it has some kind of identity crisis, I will say. As I said before, it is very funny at some times and it is very horrific at other times. But it doesn't really balance these two well, and sometimes they flow into each other, which undermines every horror aspect of this movie. This movie is only scary in the house attack event. Ever since the house attack has occurred and events starts kicking up, this movie becomes kind of an action comedy, which sucks because this movie already established itself as a great horror movie, and then you just go into comedy action bits. And that takes you out of the movie and just doesn't make anything suspenseful. And you don't even start to feel for these characters because, hey, it's just kind of a comedy now. And even though if some of them gets axed off, you don't really feel it. It doesn't really hit you because the movie was presenting a lighter tone for itself. There's also a plot twist in this movie at the end, and unfortunately this movie just blows this plot twist away in the beginning. I won't say where in the beginning, but it does blow it away. And I was watching this movie with a friend of mine, and I got the twist in the beginning. He didn't get it in the beginning, but he did get it a solid 10 or 15 minutes before, if not even longer, before the twist was revealed. And the only reason that I came to the conclusion was that I said to myself, this would be the most interesting way to take the story. It just so happened that Jordan Peele thought the same thing, so that was where he was going with the story. He could have utilized that aspect a lot more, but he didn't. And then there's another aspect in this movie that's just weird. It has something to do with the human chain. I mean, why? Was it just to add mysticism to it? Or was it some commentary on, how we need to stand together? And yeah, it didn't fit well into the movie. It just added nothing to the movie per se. All it might do is that it's something you can think about afterwards, which is, what the fuck was the point of that? But other than that, it doesn't really add to the movie. It just confuses you, and it's unnecessary. However, I do like the fact that this movie has an ambiguous ending. And I'm not going to spoil what it is or what's happening, but it doesn't have a solid conclusion. All it has is a kind of uneasy ending where you don't really know how to feel about it for the character it is involved in. Now, that being said, this movie is very well done. The production value is quite high. The acting is extremely well done. A lot of horror aspects is well done. It has some interesting lore. However, it doesn't really know what it wants to do with its premise, and it just kind of become this comedy horror thing mush, and at the end it kind of drops it all on the floor, and it could have been so great. I mean, everything was there, but it's kind of like he lost his passion for this project the further you get into the movie, which is kind of a bummer because there's a lot of great potential in here, and we know that he is great at making films. So all I can say is that don't watch this movie if you want to be scared. Don't watch this movie if you want a horror movie, because you're not going to get it. You're going to get bits of it, but that is it. And don't think too much about the plot while watching it, because if you do, then everything is going to get spoiled to you. Just a heads up. That being said, I will say that this movie is a great movie. I won't say it is a bad movie because this movie has a lot of things going on for it, and you will be entertained while watching this movie because it has that comedic, natural, identifiable family aspect to it. So I will say that you should watch it in cinema. Entertainment guaranteed. So there you have it. Us is a great movie. However, it could have been a lot better, and for that kind of suffers. So have you seen it? What did you think about it? And what is your favorite comedy horror movie ever? I'm gonna go with Shaun of the Dead because I think that balances horror and comedy well, because it leans more on the comedic side of things, but it keeps it consistent. It keeps the flow, it keeps the atmosphere consistent, whereas here it just swings too much for my taste. So there you have it. But whatever you think, comment on your thoughts. And as always, until I see you in the next video, remember to stay awesome. Bye. Can we make a second one called Them? That was bad, dude.